Hello, hello, and welcome to another podcast episode of Overpowering Emotions, where I talk all things big emotions, emotion regulation, anxiety management, and resilience. I always talk about needing to rewire the brain to be able to manage our emotions and essentially build resilience. And one way to help this process is to focus our energy on learning from our experiences, but especially our positive experiences. I mean, we want to learn from all of our experiences, even when we make mistakes. And we definitely want to be able to expose ourselves to some more uncomfortable feelings because that's part of, you know, our build our brain building those pathways as well to be able to have that. But focusing on some of those positive experiences, there's a little bit of a hack that's rooted in one of our most basic human tendencies, and that is called habituation. Now, if you've done any of my training about this, I do one with common mistakes that therapists make when they're working with anxious clients. And one of the mistakes that we have is about expecting habituation to happen. If you haven't heard about the training, I'll leave a link in the show notes to make sure you check that out because it's free and, we can learn some mistakes that we might be making. But habituation, it's a really normal process and we don't want to force it for sure. And that's sometimes where we get into the trap and we start reinforcing all these unhelpful stories. But in everyday situations, we can use it to our benefit to build that resilience against the inevitable up and downs that life shows us, right? And that kids are going to face those inevitable up and downs. So we just want to start with the basics. What is habituation if you don't know? Well, habituation is the brain's natural tendency to become accustomed to things to stay the same, right? And that stay the same. And the brain is this big predictor machine and it just likes that predictability and certainty. But it's why the excitement of a brand new toy might fade after a while, or a reinforcement plan that we implement for behaviors, it loses its effectiveness 5 minutes later. Or even why the first bite of your favorite dessert tastes amazing, but by the time you get to the fifth, not so much. My girls can never understand why, that I only need one bite of something. Because that's truly, that first bite is really why. That first bite is always the best. And thereafter, our brain starts cutting away any repetitive stimuli. And so it habituates. And so we just don't taste the same, right? So that's why I only need one bite of chocolate or one bite of cake. I don't need a whole thing. Our brains are wired to pay attention to all of the new and changing stimuli because it helps us survive, right? If we were just only ever focusing on mundane, same old, I mean, we wouldn't be able to be aware of that predator that's lurking, right, to attack us. So we're always looking, always on the lookout for change, change, change. Our brain is. So once something becomes familiar, our brains have those shortcuts to cut out those repetitive stimuli. And so it's naturally tuning it out. And so again, so the first bite of something, but if you come into a room and there's an annoying little buzzing sound, at first you're going to be annoyed, but over time your brain's just going to cut it out. Now, if we manipulate habituation, which is our brain's way of just getting used to, and, so it can divert its resources to more important things. But we can use this process to enhance the enjoyment of our positive experiences, and that can help kids build resilience. So let's say you're out for dinner at your favorite restaurant and it's just the perfect night. You're seated at the very best table. You've got a gorgeous view. You're enjoying your very favorite meal, right? It's just special. Everything about it is perfect. Now, though, imagine halfway through you're eating your dinner, they get so busy, more important people come along, someone really famous, but they're just coming in for a quick drink. Okay, so you have to move. They're asking you, please, you have the best seats in the house. And they came in, we need to move you, right? So you have to move briefly, but still you have to move, pick up your plates, and you go to a cramped table. It's a noisy table. It's back, at the back of the restaurant, no views. It's right next to the bathroom because that's all they have left. How would that situation change your experience? I'd imagine it'd be the worst thing ever, right? Most people would instinctively think, of course, that it'd suck. I'd rather stay up at that nice, beautiful table. But researchers show that the opposite actually happens by briefly breaking up that positive experience. It's the best experience. going and sitting at a bad table and then coming back, you're actually enhancing your overall enjoyment when you come back. Okay. So this principle applies in all areas of life. When we look at vacations, researchers have shown that happiness sort of peaks around that 42 hours, right into the holiday. So around day 2, we're settled in. We're still savoring the firsts of the trip, right? The first time you have your margarita, the first time you go and see the beautiful sunset, the first time you go into the ocean or whatever it is, right? You have your nice dinner. Those moments really stand out because they're new, right? It's that new changing sort of the excitement. But as the vacation continues, especially if you're at like an all-inclusive resort, I personally cannot stand them because yeah, well, for me, day 1, I am bored out of my mind. I'm leaving, even in places where they're like, you cannot leave. I'm like, I have to leave. It's in everybody's best interest that I leave. I need that novelty, but the novelty fades. And so when the novelty is fading, the intensity of the joy that you experience also fades. So, what does this teach you? Well, instead of planning one long vacation, you're probably better off taking multiple really short trips, throughout the year, taking more often, but shorter ones, because you're going to experience more firsts more often. For me, I'm someone who needs to go. Like I need to go exploring and I need to go. So I'm not a lay at the beach for a week. I gotta go. But I do see this. I often work from our cabin all summer long. And I hate it by the end of the summer. Everyone is like, oh, it must be so nice. But I'm there the whole summer. I hate it. But I bet if I came out once in a while, just on the weekends, I'd love it much more. Right. So for families, I mean, this could look like a weekend getaway. Just go to a nearby town, a day trip to a nature reserve. You could even just find a cheap hotel in the city that you live in, right? Or it's just trying something new at home. Each of those moments creates that sort of fresh, joyful experience that breaks up the routine and it keeps life more vibrant for you, for the kids. So we want to just look at bringing up those positive experiences. And so we can incorporate that into our daily life with kids. And I have so many parents who are like, I need them focusing on the positive, right? Like, look at the silver lining. Everything is so negative. Well, if we're in this rut day in and day out, this is why we can break it up with little spurts of surprises, right? I actually bought a membership to go roller skating with my girls. We haven't used it, but the one time we have gone roller skating, it's just been awesome. So think about how you can break up enjoyable activities. If they love playing a certain game or if they love doing a certain craft, create some small breaks to pause, to do something else. Like maybe you're going to take out the trash. That would probably be really sucky, but, or just some small favor, right? It could just be really quick. And then when they return, that activity feels fresh again and they're appreciating it more. When my kids were small, I only gave them a few toys to play with at a time. Family and friends, or we just have this huge toy library, but I only ever gave my kids a few toys to play with at a time. And every couple of weeks, I'd rotate out different toys or different activities. I never had to buy anything new because it was always like getting new stuff just by rotating stuff out and then rotate the old stuff back in. So we could do it with so many things, right? And even things that we want them to enjoy more, right? So maybe it's reading. So instead of sitting down in one sitting, right, we can have them do intermittent movement breaks or even something really sucky then so that their return feels less tedious and more manageable. But it can't be with things that they absolutely hate. I'm going to get to that in just a second. But it's just looking at how can we bring more contentment because we know our brains are built to be anxious and depressed. So how can we bring more of those positive experiences into our life? Instead of making the weekend always the same, sprinkle in just small special activities that are different. It could be maybe a different route on a walk. It could be a new recipe or trying out a new park. It doesn't have to be anything big and glamorous, but even daily routines, right? Maybe serving something completely new or out of the blue at breakfast. That could make the morning feel really special and memorable. You could add a small twist to dinner once in a while. Maybe you're having a picnic in the living room, right? Instead of sitting at the table in the kitchen. After school, you could break up the grind of doing, just a quick stop of going to the library, or maybe it's a new game or something like that. Even during routine grocery shopping trips, you can break up the task by sending kids on a mini mission. Right? Maybe they have to go find a specific item, and maybe there's two of them and they have to go see and come back, and it's a race or race against you. So it just makes the trip feel like an adventure rather than a chore. So, how can we break those up? I really like using this during special celebrations or holidays because I find sometimes we get so caught up and it's so anticlimactic and then we're depressed afterwards. And so even things like the gifts, I mean, when they're young, they get so overwhelmed. And even if they get older, kids can show a lot of unappreciation, right? As they're just going from one to the next and the next and the next and the next. But we can break things up so that they never open everything all at once. So they can really enjoy and appreciate each gift. And that'll help, break up some of the overwhelm as well. Or just spreading out the fun throughout the day instead of making sure it's happening all at once. If they're really excited about a new toy, maybe you're going to have that quiet break just to renew their enthusiasm when they return to the toy. So it's not like 5 minutes and then they're done and on to something else. And even just think of, in your work or, in the classroom, if you're a teacher, you can interrupt regular lessons with something surprising, something that's unrelated. So it could be an unrelated fact or a short, engaging video or a brain teaser. It's just grabbing kids' attention. It's refreshing their focus, and it just helps them be more engaged when they get back to the main activity that you wanted them to do. Taking short breaks, just a quick stretching, jumping jack break, a minute of yoga, that can help kids refocus. And at work, that can help us refocus. And then it just helps us enjoy whatever it is that we're doing when we go back to it. Even just rearranging things. I know as a kid, I mean, this was huge for me, and especially with ADHD. I mean, I was rearranging my room every week. I was trying something new. So in the classroom or at home or at your office, you're just rearranging those desks or setting, learning stations up a little bit differently, or having surprise pop-ins. Maybe it's another staff or another student, having music breaks. Rotating jobs, right? Don't keep kids doing the same chores for long periods of time. You can rotate them weekly or even daily just to make the task feel new and engaging. I know at my house, it's never a fight for cleanup because we're always rotating. Who's going to do what? Someone's got to put food away. Someone's got to sweep, someone's got to wipe the counters, and someone's got to do the dishes, right? And so we usually have to take a couple of jobs, and it's kind of like first call. So then it's the excitement of calling which chore we're going to do. Taking kids out on short walks, if you're a teacher outside of the classroom, even if it's just to observe, like go look out the window, look at the weather, listen to sounds. Those small breaks from the routine tasks just keeps learning fresh, and it can really inspire creativity, right? Using fun, brief games during transitions between lessons or homework that can break up the lessons. It can refresh their attention. Just a brain break game. That alone can revitalize the class before moving on to the next subject or the next, homework task or chore that we have to do. If there's spelling drills, math drills, you can switch up how they're being done instead of, flashcards or worksheets. Maybe you're grouping challenges. There's partner games. You're using, I think it's called Cahoots, right? Like technology. So are there interactive quizzes that you can do? It's just keeping things varied. I remember helping a kiddo. I mean, I wasn't tutoring, obviously, my role is more therapeutic, but there was a lot of behaviors coming out when this young boy was needing to learn to read. And so he had all these flashcards. I still use the flashcards, but I was just looking at how could we make it more engaging? And I hid them around the office. Like I left the counseling room into the larger office, and then I went and hid them. And then it was like a scavenger hunt. And they weren't hidden like deeply. He could, easily try to find, but then I was giving him a word, go find the word cow, right? And then he'd have to run and find the word cow. So it was just mixing it up, making it more fun. And you can integrate moments of recognition, like celebrating first time accomplishments and things, just to help maintain that enthusiasm and that sense of achievement. The goal is really to create those firsts, right? That first little bout of, deliciousness or excitement. It just breaks that routine. It adds that spark of novelty. And then if we really want to maximize this, we want to add some mindfulness to the moment. And that's what's really going to help rewire the brain. It could be as simple as pausing, if you're going to have that taste, that first bite of something, so you can really taste it, right? That first taste of the ice cream and just noticing the details, the how it's melting and the temperature change, noticing details in a sunset or looking at a flower. I don't know. Just practicing that mindfulness just helps combat some of the habituation, and it's keeping the experiences vivid, right? That's really, life is about living in this moment right now. And if we're in autopilot, are freaking out, like we're missing out. And so bringing some of that mindfulness in just helps our brain not fall into autopilot habituation all the time. And if we really want kids to start seeing some more of those positives in life, maybe you can also add a journal of all the first time experiences, right? Like trying a new food, visiting a new place, seeing a new movie. And if we can really be mindful and connect and experience those, just think of the first kiss you had. The bigger the emotion, those firsts, we can really remember them. So, just being able to reflect on some of those experiences can help kids keep some of that positive energy alive, right? And some gratitude long after that moment has passed. And then at the end of each week, you could have everyone reflect on those firsts, right? Those memorable moments, just to help to learn to appreciate those experiences. Now, this is really important to think about because we usually mess things up where we might let kids go on for hours and hours and hours on things that they love and then give them lots of breaks on the things that they hate. Well, we can maybe see how this is a problem. We know we want to break up the good to really get more of the benefit of the good. But what about breaking up those unpleasant experiences? What if we're doing that the same way? No, we don't want to do that. We don't want to break up those unpleasant experiences. We want them to slug through it, right? Imagine you having to do something you hate. And for me, anything administrative, taxes, any of those types of things, I hate it. So, or cleaning the bathroom. Some things I don't actually mind. The thought of it, I'm like, ugh, but then once I do it, it's not too bad. But some things I hate. And I don't know about you, but I definitely just rather get it over in one go instead of taking breaks every 10 minutes. Because then when I do that, I'm getting sidetracked. And then that one job that should have taken me 5 minutes now is like a week-long task. Taking breaks doesn't make tasks easier. Taking breaks from unpleasant experiences often makes them worse. So it's sort of the opposite here. Okay. That's because when you're returning from a break, your brain's no longer adjusted to the unpleasantness. So it feels even more intense coming back to that thing. So you're essentially resetting that discomfort every single time. And so that's why the old advice of just rip off the Band-Aid really quickly and just get it over with, that makes a lot of sense because it's reducing the overall distress by letting habituation do its job uninterrupted. And so we're just making things worse when we're breaking it up. So if we want kids, to tackle those unpleasant things, we got to encourage them to do it in one go, right? That's going to help them get the job done faster, and it's teaching them that they can endure the discomfort, right? And that enduring that discomfort is actually better for them because it's less intense over time because the habituation does settle in. And then our brain's going to take those shortcuts to cut out the repetitive stimuli. That's why, I'll start, even though I'm like, oh, I don't want to do the bathroom. Once I'm doing it, it's not so bad. But if I had to stop and take a call or I went and go and check in something, every time I come back, it's like, we're just making it worse, right? So by just doing it one go, our brain is cutting out that repetitive stimuli, even the sucky unpleasantness, right? And so now they're learning that they can manage the discomfort and they're using that habituation to their benefit. So, of course, like with anything, I'm always talking about reinforcing things by modeling things ourselves. Anytime we need to do something that we don't like or it's really hard, we can talk about how we're just going to go and get it done. And we're just going to show them the value of sticking with it instead of constantly pausing and taking a break. And you've probably been in fights, with kids about this. If you had just done it, you would have been done by now instead of taking breaks and arguing about it. And then we can really highlight that feeling of accomplishment afterwards, right? And now we get to go do something fun, right? And now we get to see, oh, that discomfort is totally faded away, right? Once they've persisted, and now we can go do something awesome. So the big takeaway really is just that habituation, I mean, it can be a double-edged sword, right? It can either dull our experiences, which we want it to do for the unpleasant experiences. Or when we understand and manipulate it correctly, we can amplify our enjoyment for the things that we do enjoy in life. So, for kids, learning how to mindfully manage habituation can be really helpful for them, breaking up those good moments and pushing through the tough ones without any interruption. So, this is what's going to help build that perseverance, the sticking with itness, right? That we see in our resilient kids are very persistent. So, we want to teach kids and guide them in making small but meaningful adjustments for themselves as well. So, I'll leave it there today. Hopefully, that's, some food for thought. Think about how you can for homework, start breaking things up, those enjoyable things, so that they can really learn to appreciate it. And how can we get kids to stick with it? And I love using those predictions too. How sucky do you think it's going to be? How long do you think it's going to take? And all of those things, right? So that they can see that they can do it, and they can do anything for 5 minutes. You can do anything for 10 minutes, and then it's not so bad. And even if it was as bad as they thought it was going to be, and maybe it was just as bad from the beginning to the end, they still made it through, and that discomfort is gone. So, thank you for tuning in for today's episode. If you enjoyed this discussion, definitely share it with others. And until next time, help those kiddos be bold and courageous.